The audacious plan was hatched in secret. In the 1920s, John D. Rockefeller Jr., son of the Standard Oil founder, ardent conservationist and one of America's richest men, agreed to surreptitiously acquire thousands of acres of breathtaking scenery around Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and donate them to the federal government for a national park. At the behest of Horace Albright, the future director of the National Park Service, Rockefeller formed a company called the Snake River Land Co. to buy up property around the Snake River. Rockefeller knew that if word got out that he was interested in acreage there, the price would skyrocket. He was willing to pay fair market prices for the land, but not Rockefeller prices, said Park Service spokesman Andrew White. The federal government had created several national parks in the early 20th century, White said, and the philanthropist didn't want the optics that this was the federal government coming in and taking more land. The agents Rockefeller hired to do the buying told landowners only that they were representing someone who wanted the land for conservation purposes. It left locals thinking that perhaps the buyer was interested in expanding an elk preserve that had been created in 1913, said Robert Reiter, a professor emeritus at the University of Texas at El Paso and the author of Crucible for Conservation, The Struggle for Grand Tetons National Park. But by 1930, a year after Congress had established Grand Tetons National Park, word had gotten out about the purchases, and Wyoming residents were furious. On Monday, President Trump traveled to another conservation battle zone, this one in Utah, to announce his plans to dramatically reduce the size of Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante national monuments. The controversy surrounding his decision shows that the fight over the size of national parks and monuments, which reached its apex in the fight over Jackson Hole, continues to this day. Rockefeller came up with the idea of the purchases after visiting Jackson Hole and the Grand Tetons in 1926. Albright, then the superintendent of Yellowstone National Park, personally escorted Rockefeller on that trip. He had an agenda. In 1923, Albright and a group of preservation-minded dude ranch operators in Jackson Hole, concerned by the creeping commercialism of the area, had met to discuss how to protect the Tetons and Jackson Hole. They cooked up the idea of persuading a rich investor to buy up land around the Snake River and donate it to the government for a national park. Albright outlined the idea to Rockefeller as they toured Jackson Hole. Rockefeller, stunned by the splendor of the area, was captivated by Albright's pitch. When he returned home to New York, he asked Albright to send him maps of the area that showed all the privately held land, and the men created the Snake River land buying scheme. After residents in 1930 discovered what Rockefeller was up to, a few founded a weekly newspaper called the Grand Teton to oppose the expansion. Landowners said they had been manipulated into selling.